All right. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. We're not insane. That's a good way to put it. That's a really good way to put it.
So we say. I haven't polled any of your close friends.
Yeah, maybe we are insane. Maybe that's what it is. So first and foremost, I appreciate you hopping on tonight, and really looking forward to learning more about your background, all that you're doing, and kind of diving deeper into all the above. But would you mind just giving a bit of a background, a little summary on who you are, where you're from, what you're doing, all the above?
Okay, it's like brief. Okay,
I can also read this off the website if you'd like to. So whatever you prefer.
I'll try to be brief. So I'm from New Zealand, just so y'all don't have to ask me if I'm from Australia. I'm not from New Zealand originally.
Yeah.
I won a trip on the radio, and then I won a green card and ended up here, and I love it in America. I originally moved to New York City, and I love that. I currently reside in LA. I have 3 children, 2 dogs, a cat, and a bearded dragon. I live with the man that is the father of my children. And I have a couple of master's degrees, one in business, one in dispute resolution. I have my own company with that consults in workplace dispute resolution. And in addition, I've recently released a book, published a book, I guess they say, about the journey of keeping the family intact when the marriage is over. So, yeah.
So I feel like the one thing that I got out of all that we have not discussed quite yet is the bearded dragon. And so I'm curious to know about the bearded dragon first and foremost.
Well, first of all, her name is Buddy, because before we found out that he was a she, which is so LA. Sorry, that's inappropriate, but Buddy is a girl. And the funny thing about Buddy, my middle son, had been wanting a bearded dragon for years. Yeah. And when I decided that the marriage was over a couple of years ago, he's so smart. Like, he's just a really, really, he manipulated me, and he got a bearded dragon. And let me say,
good for him.
Bearded dragons aren't that expensive, but all the stuff that goes with them is the tank, the everything. So, but we now have a lizard that does nothing.
Except for you feed it all. What do you feed the bearded dragon? I had a friend that had one, but I never knew what he fed it.
It is not pretty. They eat these things that they're basically cockroaches. We buy cockroaches. Like, can you? I literally, we spend $25 a month on cockroaches.
It's only $25 a month to feed it, though.
I mean, the cockroaches, but it does also eat green beans and other things. But it's not a big eater. No, they're not big eaters. But it's the when we first got the cockroaches, I'm a real animal person. I was like, I hear them scuffling, and I was trying to feed them. Like, I'd give them water and try to keep them happy before their death. It was terrible. It was just a nightmare. Now I'm like, I just don't.
Wait, you were trying to make the cockroaches happy before their death?
I was. They're in this little container. I just had this whole story about, don't take him. Every day, like 5 cockroaches.
Oh, that's amazing. When did you find out that he was actually a she? That's a great story, I feel like.
Well, they get to a certain age where you can tell if they've got balls or not. Well, this one doesn't have balls. So
that's a great way to find out. That's a great way to find out.
Buddy may still identify as a boy, because she has been treated like a he since she was,
Well, she can identify as whatever they would like.
She can. She is gorgeous. She really is. She's great.
Oh, wow.
I think she likes me. When I stroke her little back, she closes her eyes. I don't know if that's like a fear response, but
this might sound odd. Do they make a noise when you stroke the back? Okay. No. They just kind of calm down.
She doesn't move a lot.
Okay.
But she does close her eyes.
Okay. That's
I just recently got a sauna. I've been taking her. I keep going like, come, buddy, we're going to Arizona.
Into the sauna. That's wonderful. What made you get into the sauna? I'm a big sauna steam room person. I'm not as much of a cold plunge individual, but sauna steam room, it's like an everyday sort of thing. So what made you pick up on or decide to get into the sauna?
Just all the health benefits from the hot sauna. I know cold plunges happen and people are doing it, and freezing is good, and there are a lot of health benefits from that. However, from both there are, but I think there's a lot from the steam and from the sauna. And then all my kids are athletes, so I thought, I can do something for myself, but really for the children, but for myself,
for everyone. It helps everyone. Yeah, it's great for the heart, great for the cardiovascular system.
Yeah,
that was one of my main reasons. In my family, we've historically have heart issues, and so I was like, it's probably a good idea to start sitting in the sauna and preventing that as early as we possibly can. So doing that.
When you live in LA, you're surrounded by airports, and so there's a lot of toxic stuff. Like, it's more fuel efficient, but it's very destructive. Like, the things they put in the fuel is now increases the toxicity in humans. And we're just surrounded by airports, and I live really close to LAX. So I thought it can't hurt to sweat stuff out.
Is there, and as it relates to like toxins in the air and pollution, do you dive a lot into that topic? And as it relates to like conflict resolution and understanding like how they are affecting humans?
Not so much into conflict resolution, but I think with having children, and I have one of my sons has ADHD, and 50% of his friends have ADHD or autism. So I kind of dive into that. I think that is a fascinating, the just piece of information that and I'm open to sort of investigating more, because there's got to be a reason why so many kids are now having, all these attention issues, and it's got to be a bunch of things. But
do you think so? Here's a follow-up question to that. I've actually had this conversation a lot recently with friends, because it does seem like everybody is identifying with something as of late. Is it because we are identifying it more in the doctor's office and we're more knowledgeable, or do you think it's because of something else?
I think it's all of those things.
Okay.
And
like, maybe everybody has had autism and ADHD and had these things for forever in certain amounts, but now we just are smarter about recognizing them, or maybe we're just identifying them early.
There's that for sure, but there's also, if you look at the research on food additives, I don't want to sound like a health nut here, but there's an app called Yuka, right? And it's the best app. It's free. Yuka.
Okay.
And so you go into the supermarket and you just scan the barcode of everything, and everything pops up, and it tells you everything that's in it. Like, what out of 100, how healthy is this thing? And sometimes, it's because, it's not so healthy because it's full of fat, but for me, I'm going to drink full fat milk and yogurt because I believe in whole foods. I'm not worried about the fat, but the additives, we have additives here in America that they're banned in most other countries. And when you look at the impact of those additives and colors and stuff, it's adds to ADHD, attention deficit disorder in children, and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I just think the accumulation of all of this on top of everything else. So yes, you have maybe an underlying, I think I had an underlying ADHD for sure, but I was brought up in New Zealand, eating very pure food, probably getting sprayed by all kinds of toxic friggin' pesticides. But I just think there are certain things, and now the phones and like the scrolling, and there's so many things that are impacting our mental health and our brain chemistry that when we have a lot of research, but we haven't quite wrapped our hands around it. And I think this generation, it's like people starting to die of cancer because they were smoking. Hang on a minute. I guess breathing in smoke isn't good for you.
Right.
Well, it wasn't rocket science, was it? But
yeah, I guess I haven't necessarily made this public, and I guess a number of my friends know this, but if 3 years ago I even went in and I had an appointment and I was like, hey, I've got a lot going on. I'm very busy. I feel kind of distracted. But at the time I was working a full-time job. I was doing other side gigs. I was staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I felt like I needed to have a conversation with somebody. I've never really been to a therapist, never really done like the whole psychiatrist thing before. But I was like, I'm going to go have a conversation. And I felt like I went in and was immediately diagnosed with ADHD within the first 10 minutes of being there, without a full, thorough examination. And I don't really bring this up often, but I feel like it needs to be discussed because I feel like we'll oftentimes be diagnosed immediately without maybe trying to take a natural approach, and you're automatically prescribed something that might not be the best for you. Anyways, I feel like that's, once again, it's a health conversation that's probably not at all what we're on here to discuss today. But it was a very interesting experience of mine. And I've talked to a number of individuals who have had a very similar experience, where they probably could have taken another approach or talked to somebody different, a holistic doctor of sorts, but immediately went and were prescribed based off of that initial 5 to 10 minute conversation. Once again, very strange for me.
By the way, that's this culture, be it ADHD, diabetes, osteoporosis, anything. It's like, here's a pill.
Exactly.
And that is because of how powerful the pharmaceutical companies are. Right. And that's not, I mean, it's not a secret. There's so much money behind prescribing pills as opposed to, listen, June, who, my husband, the father of my children, he had diabetes 2 years ago, and metformin and this and this and this and this, right? And then just spent the last 2 years eating really well, working out, taking care of himself, and he doesn't have diabetes anymore. And it's the same as my original career as a physical therapist, and people would come into the office, I've got a chronically sore back, fix me. And it was like, a lot of doctors here would be like, here, I'm going to do like a cortisone injection or blah, blah, blah. Me, I'm like, go and lose some weight, increase your core strength, and then come back and start whining to me about yourself. I mean, I'll help you work your way while you do that, but coming in and doing nothing for yourself and wanting me to fix you and you not taking responsibility isn't going to get you where you need to be. Like, it's a downhill road.
Well, I'm glad you said it, and I think it's hard for like some people to even say that nowadays too. It's people will come with a problem, or people will complain about an issue. It's like, well, there might be something else going on, considering.
Oh no! Did I say something terrible? Did I say
no? Not at all. I just feel like I'm the same way, right? Well, what I'm getting at is that even saying things like that, or saying, hey, that person might be a little overweight. Maybe they should go lose some weight and go to the gym, or go for a walk, or eat better, or stop watching TV and go to sleep at the right time, which is something I do, right? But I'm just saying, like, things like that are very common sense, which people seem to be getting away from nowadays. Instead, it's immediately to go take Adderall, go take 5-AMs, go take this pill so you can get through the day better. But what that ultimately leads to is, I just say from experience too, it was the worst experience ever. I stopped sleeping. I did not sleep. I was focused, but the down was awful. So obviously got off of it altogether, and started getting into a better routine, trying to go to sleep at a certain time, eating better foods, drinking less alcohol, trying to. So I think those are like the common sense solutions that not many people talk about nowadays. And I'm really interested too, from once again, I go back to the conflict resolution side of things too. I feel like that's where you kind of have to start, is with like probably common sense when it comes to conflict resolution. So where do you start with people on that front?
I love that you're trying to circle it back, but I just want to say one more thing.
Yeah.
And that is, what you're saying is key. However, as a mother of a son who, if he did not have his Adderall, which I was out of town last week, and he didn't take it for a couple of days, and he got suspended for acting badly. And this is the sweetest, most intelligent, kindest kid who, anyway, and I spent a bunch of time with him over the days while he was suspended, and just talking, and him talking about not feeling safe, like not being able to there is a real legitimate argument for the pills. At the same time, not only had he not taken his pills, he hadn't gone to bed when he needed to go to bed. He hadn't eaten when he needed to eat. He had been on his video games too long. Like, there were so many other compounding factors. And I think it's looking at the big picture and working out what for you need to do, and just being just thoughtful about that, and going back to that thing of the person coming in and saying, fix me. It's like, yeah, I can be a piece of it, but I'm not all of it, right? The drug can be a piece of it, but it's not all of it. So I just don't want to shame anybody for going on pills, if that's because you don't shame people that go on, things because they've got type 1 diabetes.
Right.
My son has type 1 ADHD. Right? And there are things that he can do that makes it better for his body. Just like if you've got type 1 diabetes, you don't go and binge on ice cream. There are things you can do. So
and I think what I try to avoid to the best of my ability is speaking in absolutes. What's best for one person is not best for the other. Then speaking about certain drugs, obviously we're in an incredible time in civilization where we've created drugs that solve problems really effectively for a lot of people, but it's the being taken advantage of piece of it, or the exploitation of the system, I guess, that's a bit frustrating across the board. Where it'd be nice for somebody to come in.
A great example of that right now is Ozempic. This pill, that injection that people are taking. I mean, it definitely helps, but damn, that thing is toxic. Like, it is toxic.
I've seen a lot of videos online, though, of mainly women promoting Ozempic, though, as of late. More so, and I thought the algorithm for me, frankly, I thought the algorithm would be all the negative things about Ozempic. I've seen a lot of positive about Ozempic as of late, strangely enough.
And it's a piece of it, though. Like,
right.
Unless you're willing to change enough. Okay, I'm on a soapbox.
That one gets brought up all the time, and I'm like, well, people just kind of like, they're like, oh, I'll take Ozempic. It's like, is that the fix all though? Like, are you really going to change other habits? I think
working out and eating better and all those things. Okay,
there's more to it.
Let's get on. Yeah, where are we going?
I guess we don't want Big Pharma to cancel us right now.
Oh, us? It's your podcast. What was my name again?
Your stuff's all linked on here, though. Oh, man. So what, I guess I will wrap it back around to conflict resolution, because we haven't even gotten into any of that, but this is all wonderful. What was kind of what inspired you? What was kind of the reason for starting? Is it Goto Solutions?
Goto. So my last name is Goto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What inspired it was, to be transparent, my husband lost his job and I was pregnant with my third child.
Got it.
And so I was working a little bit, but I wasn't like, okay, I need to make money.
Right.
And so I decided, what can I do? And I started coaching. I decided, I'm just going to find somebody that I can help right now. And this business, one of the people that I helped happened to be a friend from business school, and she was miserable in corporate America and wanted to get out. And I've always been an entrepreneur, and so I supported her leaving the company and starting a yoga retreat business. And then, how unprofessional am I? I've got the phone on, and so. I ended up, because of the yoga retreat, and then I went and coached everybody on the yoga retreat in Costa Rica, 6 months pregnant, and
love Costa
got a
Rica.
whole bunch of, I got a whole bunch, it was fabulous, of really amazing. So her retreat was focusing on women that were like, I got to decompress. I'm working too hard. So I met a lot of really incredible women, strong, very successful corporate women. And so I started coaching them, and that transitioned me into how, you need to come in and help my team or whatever. So I ended up going into the companies, and then it just naturally, I realized the whole relationship management within the people piece is so mismanaged. and it just became the sweet spot for me, and loved it. I mean, I could sit in a conversation and just facilitate between people for hours and just I just love it. I don't know why. It's so weird. And so that's what I ended up doing. And that was how it started.
Is that the typical process? Is to come in with a group of individuals and play the middleman during a meeting with two other individuals? Or what is that typical?
No.
What is that sweet spot for you?
So there's a number of entry points. One is where you've got a team that's really dysfunctional. It's high turnover, and HR is like, I am just, 80% of my time is on this one team. Like, please, come and help me.
Right.
And so that's one way that I'll go in and just really talking to everybody on the team and finding out what's really happening from a very neutral perspective, coaching people through it, and then going to leadership and saying, this is the reason that this is broken. It could be the people, it could be the system, like people in the wrong roles or the wrong people on the team, or the systems aren't in place. There's no accountability loop. You have a high conflict leader. You have a manager who needs some training, those sort of things. And then, so that's one way. Another way is where they have, there are two people who are in conflict and really need to get through their conflict. They'll bring in to facilitate that. Yeah.
Is there a certain kind of business like size that you like working with? Any size?
No, because pretty much it's all relationships. Doesn't matter how big your business is. Like I can go into a business with two people, and if those two, like the two founders, are floundering, that's as rewarding as going into a company of 10,000 people and there's a team of 6 that are just struggling because they've got a very dysfunctional manager, and there's and navigating that for them.
Right. Are you ever asked to come in and help with like government organizations, public entities?
I have actually. The Pentagon. I did work at the Pentagon, where there was a very dysfunctional team, and help them navigate that. And also a couple of the cities here in LA. Not LA City itself. I've done like trainings for the police and things like that about how to be more empathetic, perhaps. But there are certain city departments that I have helped just help them, like facilitating the conversations that they're not having. Why do you ask that? It's interesting. Why'd you ask that?
I'm just interested. I like. I mean, not to bring up, everything going on internationally currently, but it's like we probably need some better facilitators between countries at this point. And from a conflict resolution perspective, I just feel like there's a lot to discuss there and a lot to unpack. And considering you deal with it on a daily basis, I wonder what solutions can maybe be put into place to prevent one country from maybe sending $1 billion worth of missiles towards another country, and another country, wiping out a certain number of civilians, and all the other issues that are going on internationally. Right? There's so much to unpack there, I like to think that there's ways that we could better communicate between countries, and maybe that's all cultural, maybe it's all religious, maybe it's all historical. Once again, there's a million different reasons and a lot going on.
I think there's a lot that goes on that we don't know about.
Right.
I had a professor during my my master's at Pepperdine in dispute resolution who was part of a lot, like he would go to the Middle East, and he was, it's called like, I think third tier or third track negotiation. Like they were diplomacy, like third tier diplomacy. So it's, nobody knows about it, but they're in there. They're having cups of tea, and they're trying to facilitate, like preparing the situation for when the head of state comes in. So I think that there's a lot that goes on. I'm going to be controversial and say that I think if you had all the more mothers in these meetings, there would be different outcomes, because it's the mother's children that fight. It's the mother's children that get killed. And I think women have this inability to just be tunnel vision on. We're so good at kind of like looking at all these different aspects of everything, and I think being able to humanize each other is key.
Right.
We can get people sitting at the same table and humanizing each other and understanding that I'm killing your child and you're killing my child, and we just want to make that stop. Right. You're going to have a different conversation.
Why do you think that's controversial? To say that having women
I hate saying, well, women.
Yeah.
It's like it's not just. It's just that
mothers.
Feminine.
Yeah.
It's just that it's mothers. I mean, there are men that are there. I mean, and it's just coming from that nurturing,
right? That
feminine, like bringing more feminine into it. You can be you can be a man and have feminine energy, but it's just the masculine energy is destroy, kill, feed, supply. Like that is it's masculine energy, and I think that there's just so much of that at the table that if we could just put a little bit more feminine in there, it would change the dynamic. By the way, can you hear the
not at all? No,
thank goodness.
Feels fine.
They always come at the worst times.
Yeah. Are they mowing the lawn currently?
Well, no. You know what? I don't know if you have a bunch of leaf blowers where you're from, but for whatever reason, we should all just do it on the same day, but nobody does. So every day,
somebody else. Yeah, we've got some people next door it sounds like they're rebuilding the entire house, but they're just gutting the inside. And we thought that it was going to be like a week-long project. It's gone on now for the past 3 months. And I think they've now taken out every single stud in the house and replaced it. So I don't know what they're doing, but I'm looking forward to seeing the end result, but we're also kind of tired of hearing it. So that's been fun. So I agree with you 100% on bringing more mothers to the table and getting them more involved. And I think there's like organizations and there's mothers groups on Facebook and here and there that talk about these things all the time, and obviously very involved at like a governmental level as well. What do you think that looks like in regards to getting more women and mothers specifically involved at those like higher levels?
That's an excellent question. I don't think I have an answer, but I'll put that on my notes as things to research. More mothers at the table.
Get more mothers at the table. Because I 100% agree with you. I when it comes to the masculine energy side of things, I think talking about like adding more feminine energy to it, definitely not a bad thing. But when it comes to the masculine side of things, is it truly the masculine side though? Do we really think it's the kill, murder, destroy side of things that is causing all these issues, or is it more than that? Is it empathy? Is it a lack of empathy across the board? Because I think I say this too because for a lot of guys, they're told to be less, not manly, but to be a little less aggressive, right? Which some people associate with being a man, and being historically men being more aggressive has caused war. Don't disagree with that whatsoever. But how do men stay masculine while also being empathetic and solving more problems like this?
Another great question.
Staying true to ourselves while also simultaneously fixing issues.
I 100% agree with you.
That's one that I say I struggle. I have conversations with friends all the time about it too, where you're constantly told like, people want you to be more of a man, want you to be more manly, more masculine, but also don't be so manly because people associate death and destruction and killing with that as well. Which I understand historically, I totally get it. But how do you kind of play those roles and that balance in life? And I feel like those are the questions that you kind of get bombarded with on a daily basis as trying to be a man in modern society. And I'm not sure what LA is like. LA is obviously a much different place than Charleston, South Carolina, or South Carolina in general. But those are all things that I think we're trying to understand for ourselves. And so going back to a global perspective, I mean, bringing more mothers to the table, I think it's a wonderful idea. But keeping men so they actually continue to serve and protect instead of kill and destroy, which I think is a utopia of sorts.
So what I would say to that is that your biological men are we're all biologically wired to fight or freeze or run, right? And I have a fight reflex. I'm not a runner. Like, I have a very masculine, like, okay, really? Like, I'm competitive. Yep. It's, I have to, someone be like, I can't be feminine. Anyway, so Robbie, my dog. Sorry.
But not Buddy. It's not Buddy running across the screen.
No, it's Robbie. Okay, I'm just gonna.
It's totally fine. Totally fine.
Oh, stop barking. Okay, so I
actually couldn't hear. For what it's worth, I could not hear the dog. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is good. Okay.
The noise canceling is working really well.
I have good thoughts on that. I think I have good thoughts. We're wired up to fight or run, right? When we are triggered, when we're in that fight or flight, which I think is, we are in that way too much now. Everything we do is so overstimulated, like everything, like constantly stimulated. And I think the key is that pause, the ability to stay in your frontal cortex to be, or get back in there. Because when you're in there, when you're in that executive functioning, you act differently than when you're in that like tunnel vision, destroy.
Right.
And so that worked in the old, when you needed to run and kill a bear or protect the family from a tiger, but right. It's just not our reality anymore. So I think the key is the ability to take that pause and stay curious to other people's perspectives and interrupt these biological like urges to just hate people that don't look like you and act like you, because we've got reasons to do that. Because if you were out and alone and came across a tribe that looked different than you, you'd probably die, right? Which is why we were in tribes, because it kept us safe. So overcoming these automatic knee-jerk reactions, so creating that space is the first one. And I even as a woman, I have to do that, right? Like I'm just okay, don't act all competitive here. Take a deep breath. I also think the other piece is the collaboration. So what I was saying before, I think women are have more of a tendency to collaborate rather than compete. Okay. And so women and men need to collaborate. And that collaboration is what allows the woman for the feminine energy to exist and the masculine energy to exist in both people. But I'm with you. I've come from New Zealand, as I said already. Women got the vote in New Zealand before, and it was the first country in the world to give women the vote. So we've had, some very strong feminist roots. Right. And I have been a strong feminist my whole life, which in my mind has been the only word that's coming to my mind is bastardized. It's like
the great thing, I think you're going to answer this, but what does being feminine mean to you? Like, what does the feminist movement mean to you?
So being feminine and the feminist movement, two different things. The feminist movement is about we deserve the same opportunity to use our brains however we want, right? We have the same opportunity to make choices. It doesn't mean we're the same. And in New Zealand, we really got that wrong. And I'm sorry to all my Kiwi brethren. However, there are a lot of very, very masculine men in New Zealand. Like, they are big and they are masculine. And I mean, we were pioneers. Yeah. It's a very warrior culture. And to then have these women who also from the same stock, like, we are strong, we are competitive. And we were like, don't open the door for me. You think I can't open my own door? And they're like, oh my God, jeez Louise. And I see exactly what you're saying. As a man, just losing track of I just want to please you. I want to provide. I want to be this masculine energy here, and it's not pleasing you. And now I don't know, what do I do? And it's very disconcerting. And I saw my brother come to America and meet an American woman, and he just was like, whoa. he's like opening the door to the car and he's paying for dinner and it's like, oh, that's amazing, right? But then when I'm here and the American men are, these American women expect us to pay for dinner and they expect this and they expect that, but my brother was like, thank you so much for letting me do all of this, right?
Right. Well, there's the other side of it too, where like growing up for me, in which these are all expectations, and I really appreciated learning lessons as a kid. But you open the door, you serve the woman. That was just what I was taught in every way. You pay for every single meal, even though I had no money at the time. You figure out a way to pay for every single meal, and I think there's a balance to that of sorts, right? As time goes on, which everybody's different. Not speaking in absolutes here, but it does feel good to be able to provide. And to be able to do those things. It is very fulfilling. It feels very good. So,
excuse me. Well, I think the difference with the feminist movement in America was that women were really sexualized.
Yep.
It's different. So, and you're much younger. My brother's 50. So I'm talking about he's being brought up and that was how we were brought up. I was brought up reading feminist novels, Marilyn French, and at 13 and 14. So, I was standing up saying, well, I'm not sure why the boys get to go and roll the cricket pitch and I have to go make the sandwiches. Well, why wouldn't we get to choose what we want to do? Because I'd rather go outside. That's me at 10 years old, right? So that culture in New Zealand is pretty deep. And I think in America, the women became very sexualized and the men. So it's just kind of a different dynamic. Yeah.
But you wouldn't know that if you didn't have a conversation with somebody from New Zealand or do your research on it internationally, right? And you wouldn't realize how different and unique it is everywhere. I mean, even once again, South Carolina is very different than California and New York and Florida and all the above. Everybody's unique, which I think for me has been a huge help to me has been getting out of town. And I studied abroad and lived abroad for a while and have constantly traveled to different locations or tried to travel to different locations to get a better perspective and a unique perspective. Because everybody has one and every single issue is different in every single country because their cultures are different and their people are different. So.
And can I just put my hand up and say, if we want to go back to conflict resolution, what you just said then is the foundation of all of it.
Okay.
Understanding most 99.9% of people are not bad people. They just have a perspective that you do not understand. And we all, now that we are going out and there is so much diversity around us, there are so many people with completely different perspectives. To try to understand that person is the way that you enter any kind of conflict of like, I understand that we're, missing here. Help me understand.
Right.
And being curious and assuming best intentions, assuming that they're not a horrible person trying to destroy your life.
Is it to go from New Zealand to New York, California, so to the States in general, how much more diverse are things? Was that overwhelming to you at first? Did it immediately change a bunch of opinions? I mean, just considering how diverse things are here. And I always go back to the story, and I love telling this because I studied in Estonia for a month in college, and I remember everybody was white there. And we were at a coffee shop and watched the one African-American Black individual walk by the coffee shop, and every single person turned and stared at the Black person. And for me, I didn't think about it at all. Didn't think twice, but every single person's head turned in that coffee shop. So it immediately triggered me to be like, wow, things are different in every country. And nobody has any right to say that things are better or worse, right? In that regard, culturally, diversity-wise, because America really is truly incredibly diverse. But it also brings up a lot of issues, right? So I'm just curious to know how things have maybe shifted for you in shifting from New Zealand to the States.
Gosh. So when you ask, so we're talking about I came in the late 90s. And so the internet we did not have the visibility into the rest of the world that everybody does now. So I had very little. I thought I was going to meet somebody on the plane who would have me stay with them. I also thought that LA and New York were just like next door to each other. I had zero concept of distance. When I got to I couldn't eat because I couldn't cross the road outside of LAX because I didn't know you had to use the crosswalk and there were so many lanes of traffic. I was literally darting in and out of traffic like coming to that movie there. Anyway, and then I get to New York, I get to the airport, I'm like, I finally eat. And I go up and and there's this woman there. I've never seen a woman look, I've never seen nails. I'd never seen nails like this. I'd never seen braids. I'd never, the act, I couldn't understand what she was saying. She couldn't understand what I was saying. And she was kind of angry at me. She was like, I don't understand what I was like, I think it's a salad. She's like, what? I was like, somebody gets to the back of the line. I was just like, oh. And just energetically, I'd never been around anybody like that. It just, nobody in New Zealand vibrated the way that this woman, the way that a lot of people vibrate in New York, right? So yes, that was shocking. So no, not a lot of diversity in New Zealand. When I was in New Zealand, it was very much, there was diversity. One of my best friends was an Indian guy, but his family had come to New Zealand when they were, like three generations. Right. And he sounded just like me. He acted just like me. They ate some different food at home, but culturally we called ourselves a melting pot. We were all Kiwis. It wasn't until the late 90s where there was a lot of immigration. Like from the 90s to now, we've doubled our population. So you can imagine the change. And I can't speak to that because I haven't lived there. Yeah. But okay, so what was your question? Diversity.
Yeah, it was just obviously a massive change. So
one of the things that I found really interesting was the stereotype, the bias that people have that I had zero context for. Not coming from America, looking like a white American woman, but having no context to what that meant, and having I didn't know about slavery. I didn't have these unconscious biases about African American people. I didn't even have biases about waspy people or white America. It was kind of this empty slate for me. I have biases about other things, right, from what I was brought up with. So I think one of the things that's been really interesting is being treated a certain way and not really, and realizing that I'm dealing with somebody who can't see me, right? They can't see me because all they see is their empirical bias of who I am.
Right.
And also, I came here with nothing. Like, I was broke. I've been homeless. When I was in New York City, I had nowhere to stay. It just like so many different things that I've gone through. I don't have any family here, so people just think, oh, she's a privileged white girl, right? And so I can't relate to her, and I hate that. I hate that when people deal with you in a certain way, and you're just like, and I'm sure that a lot of people experience that. Right. A lot of people, we all experience it.
Well, I guess we all create, unconsciously, we all create assumptions right off the rip, regardless.
Immediately, of course.
Everybody does. And I think that's one thing, too, that people are like, well, I don't have unconscious bias. It's like, okay, everybody does. It's just, it's what it is.
It's the way your brain works.
So identifying that is great and understanding that is great. But then to say, I guess there's an empathy aspect of that, where people don't go deep enough ever. They automatically assume somebody's a certain way and they stop there. So do you get a lot of that in your work with people where they maybe make assumptions and they stop, they don't dig deep enough, and then you come in and ask the right questions and immediately they're like, oh, I get it now. So all the time.
So most conflict, the foundation of it comes from people making wrong assumptions and not checking it out. You said this, and I think, this is what I think you're meaning. Oh, no, that's not what I was meaning. I was meaning blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. Right. People don't do that.
Right. What is your, this might be giving away too much of like the juice and the consulting, but what is your process when it comes to these situations? I know there's a number of different ways to get involved with different businesses and organizations at different pain points, but what is maybe like the general process for getting involved with an organization, starting the process of solving their issues?
I talk to everybody involved.
Okay.
Everybody who is a part of it. I get every perspective in the room, and I come in a very neutral, non-judgmental, open, curious way. And most people, a lot of people cry. They're just so relieved to have somebody hear them, to hear what they've been trying to say, understand their perspective. It's such a relief. And so once I do that, I'll hear the same story from all these different perspectives, and I can get a sense of what's probably the most true of what happened, and understanding, the motivations of the group and how they got there. So that's how I start. And then from there, I'm able to sit down and then facilitate a conversation. And it's beautiful because I can hear what a person is saying. And I know, because if I understand their perspective, I know what they're trying to say. But because I know this person's perspective and experience, I can understand what they're hearing, right? And so so I'm able to say, you just said this. Is that what you heard? Did you hear this? And the person will be like, no, I didn't hear an apology. Were you trying to apologize? Yeah, I am trying to apologize. Okay, so what are you apologizing for? So, and it just like that whole thing. And then it's just like, so it's just breaking down all of this miscommunication. And then people feel humanized, they feel heard, and they're able to move forward.
Right. Not to just completely jump to a different topic, but I do want to talk about go from this into the book somehow, because a lot of this is conflict resolution based, and so I think just starting on the book and why you wrote the book at the time you did, we just kind of start there, and then we'll dive into different parts of the book along the way.
I wrote the book because going through my marriage falling apart and finally deciding, okay, I'm done. Like, this isn't best for me. This isn't best for the children. I'm done. And then that journey, but then hearing so many stories from people around me who had so many people with children, suddenly everybody's telling me these stories. It's like suddenly I'm part of a club.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why don't people talk about this? Like, now you're telling me, like, it would have been helpful to know some of these things a little while back. And I just think that there's such an idea that you either have to stay miserably married or you destroy your family and get divorced. And that perception creates a very toxic family life for way too long, because divorce is so awful and so bad that nobody wants to do it. So they think, well, this is better, which is what I was doing, until this isn't better than that train wreck, right? So I'm going to pit that train wreck over this train wreck. And then they pick that train wreck. Well, they've already had that. Now they have both train wrecks. So my thing is that the sooner you can be honest, hey, our marriage isn't working, but that doesn't mean that we can't be a family. Like, we can't love our children and parent our children and work out how to collaborate and work together and support each other. About 70% of people say 50% of marriages fail. 50% of first marriages fail. Second marriages, it's like 65, then it's more and more and more the more. And then on top of that, you think about all the people that don't get divorced because they just decide to stay miserably married. You've got to say the failure rate's at least 70%. Why are we so hard on ourselves? It doesn't work. So
with those statistics, and I'll just say this from, like, the perspective of younger individuals getting married, or they're in their first marriage, or they may be experiencing some of these issues early on. What's some practical advice for people that are, first and foremost, and planning on getting married in the very near future? And then secondly, for the other category of the people that are going through those issues currently and trying to overcome them.
So the first group who are about to get married, pick someone who will not destroy you and your children if the marriage fails. Pick someone that is going to value being a parent and value the family over and above their ego and their need for the happily ever after myth. It might work out, but there's more chance that it won't. So going into it, understanding that, number one, and number two, going in, committing to each other to be honest. If this stops working, like if you start struggling, let's talk about it. Like I can handle it. I'm gonna take care of myself. You take care of yourself. We'll take care of each other. And at some point, the sooner you can start acknowledging, I'm struggling. This isn't working for me. I'm not feeling intimate. I'm not feeling seen, or whatever it is. Being honest, the more you can be honest, you just own it. Because I think what happens is people are not honest for too long. By the time they start trying to be honest, the other person's like, what? And you're just in completely different places. So I think that knowing that your marriage ending is not the end of the world, right? It's going to be fine. Like no matter. So I think making that commitment up front is important.
It sounds like a lot of this too. I mean, asking the right questions, and there's a certain maturity level to all of it. How do you go about though? Because you obviously seen plenty of people. So you just mentioned it. They'd say one thing in an office, and another person hears something completely different. Obviously, that happens in relationships too. So how do you go about asking the right questions or starting to formulate the right questions in your own head, knowing that the other person on the other end might hear it a different way, right? Tone out, and I say this from a sales perspective, tonality is like everything. But asking the right questions is so huge, and we just don't do a great enough job of that.
Well, because you have to listen first. So getting really good at listening, and then actually checking out your assumptions. Is this what you just said? Am I understanding this?
Got to be able to listen.
Oh God. I mean, if you're really listening, you know what to ask. And also the motivation to want to know the answer. Like I used to say to June, so how am I doing as a wife? How would you rate me out of 10? How could I do better? What could I do that would make, he's like, you're an 8 out of 10. Okay, so what could I do
to get to a 10?
Better to get to a 10 this week, right?
Yeah.
And I think just assessing it like that, because then it makes you think, okay, well, these are the needs that aren't being met. You know, I feel like we haven't sat down and spent any quality time together for too long. Okay,
right.
Okay, let's do it.
Love it.
It's understanding that it's a constant, it's a process, and it's a day-to-day commitment. Just because people think, oh, we've got married, okay, good, I've got that taken care of, we're married, all right. But no, it's like this relationship takes difficult conversations. It's an active sport. It's a team sport.
Right.
Yes, I think if you can think about yourself when you get married as a team, like I still think of June as a teammate, right? I stood by him. Our marriage is over. He got to a point where he was in a really bad place. He's got into a much better place. However, I have never ditched him, right? He's the father of my children. What's best for him is best for my children. What's best for me is best for him, best for, it's like you're a team. And I think if you marry somebody who's a team member, who's someone who's Team Goto is what we call ourselves,
Love it.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting way of looking at it too, because in certain cultures, especially where I'm from, you get divorced, it's like the end of the world. It's terrible. And so you don't look at it as like, if I get divorced, then life's gonna be great. Like you get divorced, it's not gonna be great. And it's very frowned upon with a lot of people. And so I think, looking at it from the perspective of, okay, I'm going to do this with somebody, and if things do go wrong, at least I know they're going to take care of my children, and they're going to have our best interests in mind, without thinking about divorce, right? But thinking about them taking care of your people and your offspring long term. I think that's a great point to be made. And not many people look at it from that perspective. I guess we also can't look at it that far out too. It's kind of hard to forecast the future like that. But it is good to know that you're partnering with the right individual at the very beginning. I think it's
looking at it as two separate things. The two of you choose to get married and be a couple and have a relationship. The next thing you do is you choose to bring children into the world and become a family, right? That is never going to stop. Parenting, being a parent, right. You can never quit being a parent. You're a parent who quit. you're still a parent. You're still that person's father, whether or not, whatever, you are the father. And so you can quit a job, you can quit a marriage, but you cannot quit a child. So once you do that, once you make that decision to be a family, you're committed to that for life. This marriage, this relationship is constant work. This might fail, but this cannot fail. And this is not reliant on the two of you having sex and being intimate and with each other for life. You can, do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's the process that I've gone through in the last 2 years of separating out my intimate relationship with June from the family. Like I'm 100% this family, right? I'm dating somebody else, but I'll never pick him over what's best for the family. And sometimes picking him is best for the family because it's best for me. Right. And what's best for me and my health is best for the family.
Understood. Diving deeper into the book, because we can't read the book on the podcast. What are some major pieces of the book, though, that might be helpful to bring to light now that would convince somebody to pick up the book and read the book? I'm sorry.
The book is kind of like a handbook. It's got these exercises, and I think one of the one key that I realized when I started going down this road and talking to other women and men who were not in who just were like, "How are you doing that?" That would be great, but my husband would never do that. Or my wife she's not going to go for that, right? It's about creating a sense of confidence for yourself. So if you've let yourself go, right? If you've just given up on yourself and come back, start taking care of yourself. Build your support network. If you feel like you just don't have the support, feeling like you don't have the financial security, looking at your life and saying, okay, this is what I value. And so I've got this exercise in the book, and it's about, what is your perfect world? Write down, think about your perfect world. What does it look like? This is where you want to be, right? And what does this perfect world say about what you value? Do you value security? Do you value space? Do you value the beach, family, whatever it is? What are the things that you really value, right? And then do a rating out of 10 for each value. Where are you at? And if you value intimacy, where are you at with intimacy? Oh, I'm a 2 out of 10. If you value peace and tranquility in your home, where are you at out of 10, right? So go and do that. And then, so you've looked at where you want to be, and then you look at where you actually are and your values, and you're like, okay, so what could I start doing? So peace and tranquility, I'm a 2 out of 10. What could I do today to increase the peace in my home? Just start doing the really little things. I value health. I haven't exercised in 5 years, right? I'm rating myself as a 4 out of 10. What could I do? Go for a walk. Just go for a walk. Just start making choices based on what you value. And then you start to build your internal strength and start being true, making decisions, not from a place of fear. Oh, this would be bad. And I can't, I'm not going to have enough money, and the kids are going to be upset, and all these things. You're making choices on what you value. So that would be that's kind of like one of the initial exercises in the book to start thinking about how you want to make different decisions.
Have you had more women or men readers or I guess conversations with people what type of individual, I guess, is reading this book right now? Is it people, of all ages? Obviously people in, with modern families, but more men, more women, a little bit of both?
It's honestly, it's more women.
Okay.
And what's interesting about that is that in a typical relationship, when you're dating, it's 50% as likely as for either partner to be the one to end it. When it's not working, that could be, either one. In a marriage, I think it's something like 70% are ended by the woman. Because marriage serves men, a traditional marriage often serves men more than it serves women. So the man's less likely to pull we're miserable, but I'm getting my needs met outside the marriage because I got to, whatever it is, right? And I I've got this wonderful family at home. My wife is taking care of the kids. I've got a great career. It just is much more supportive of that.
Right.
So it's much harder for a woman to be the one. You're in typically a lot more vulnerable. So for a lot of women, it's this, oh my God, I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't see it. He would do this, he would do that. I don't have. So it's about empowering women to be yeah. But then I do speak to
was there a follow-up to that? I felt like there was more to that.
Well, there was. I mean, I also speak to men about it. I spoke to a man a couple of weeks ago, and I think because of the book, he divulged that he cheated on his wife, and he's got 3 children, very, very wealthy, very successful, and feels terrible about himself. But he's like, maybe she's cheating. There's not a lot of intimacy, And I was like, why can't? And I said, and you can't leave because it's going to it's more difficult for him. Like, he doesn't you've got 2 homes. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think it just behooves everybody to be more honest about it.
So
he would love, could you imagine if he was able to be honest with his wife, they're not there, and be able to say, listen, our marriage is over, but we live in this fabulous big ass house. You can have that wing. I'll have this wing. We'll keep parenting these children together. We'll develop our foundation as a family. And by the time the kids, we're in a place where we feel comfortable to be in 2 different places, we've already sorted everything out. There's no fighting. There's no big dumpster fire.
So things like that happen in somebody's life at that point. Do you think it's best who do you think they should typically go to share that information immediately? Go directly to their spouse? Go to speak to a third party?
I would speak to a third party, probably. I think just internally doing the work, working out what it is, getting clear on what it is that you want. And I think therapy is very helpful for that. The reality is by the time you get to that point, most couples have tried all kinds of things.
Right.
They've tried therapy. They've tried individual therapy. They've tried just having an affair. They've tried all kinds of things to try to make it survive. Date night once a week. Trip to Hawaii.
Scheduling things on the calendar. Yeah.
Right. Scheduling things on the calendar. So it's not that they haven't tried everything. It's kind of like, okay, so let's try this. Right.
Right. Are there any books to be written in the future, sequels of sorts?
I think maybe the next book, and it's kind of like true to my I'm here, I'm there kind of personality, is the modern business. I think companies it's a very, very interesting time with how people are so sensitive, because this has been a crazy 4 years, and people just have the ability to tolerate conflict and disruption is so much less than it used to be. Right. We have the workforce is very different now, the makeup of it, and how do you manage successfully in this world? How do you navigate conflict? People are so afraid to say anything. You can literally say anything and it be twisted in a way that you're just a horrible, raging something or other.
Yeah.
I talked about the food I ate in Belize the other day at this job that I had with this toxic manager, and she was able to twist it into me being biased about third world countries. And I was like, no, I was just saying I ate a lot of the same food because I was out deep in a third world country.
Right.
So it's just a very difficult environment. So I think working out how to navigate that would be a great next book.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time this afternoon for you, but tonight, and diving into all these topics, which I feel like there's a lot of different directions to go when it comes to conflict resolution, and a lot of different things we can continue to discuss into the future. But is there anything else that you maybe want to add that we didn't touch on tonight? Personal, business, all the above.
Well, Well, I have three things.
Okay.
Three things that I'd love to just be of service in any way. If there's any of your listeners are in this miserable marriage and would love to talk to me about what is this other option and could it be possible? That's one thing. The other thing is if you've got a toxic work environment and you'd like some input on that. And thirdly, if anyone is listening who has been really successful navigating either of those two situations, I have my own podcast called Resolutionary Leaders, and I would love to interview. I'd love to interview them on. And so just on my website, which is Helena, like HelenaGoto.com. I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes.
Absolutely.
There'll be a button where you can just like schedule a time to chat to me. I love a chit chat.
Just curious, where is that on the website? I've got on the main page, or is there an about section?
It's going. I'm actually. That was it's going to be there as of like tomorrow.
Perfect.
Because I'm transitioning my calendar to a different thing, so it's just in the works. So hopefully, don't publish this before Monday.
We're pretty quick over here. No, this will probably be up in 3 or 4, 5 days. Okay. By middle of next week. So
I'll be ready by then. You'll find something that says book a conversation on my website.
Well, great. Well, I really appreciate it, and look forward to once again. There's a lot of different conversations I feel like we can continue off the podcast. So I really appreciate this. But I'm going to go ahead.